Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. The mother of a teenager who was killed in a motorcycle collision Friday is speaking out. Her son collided with another motorcycle on EC Row Expressway. Plus, a tentative deal has been reached between Unifor and Stellantis. That came 7 hours after thousands of workers went on strike at midnight. We have your latest. And we explore a mysterious plane crash that has kept industry experts puzzled for the last 82 years. A Windsor mom is planning a funeral for her 16-year-old son. Dakota Rivard died in a motorcycle crash over the weekend. It happened on the EC Row Expressway on Friday. Windsor police are continuing to investigate. Today, CBC News sat down with his mother, who describes him as an honest kid, a leader, and someone who loved motorcycles.
Dakota was the most passionate, endearing, loving boy. He would try me, he would push me to my limits, but he was just the light of the family and of any room he was in, really. He just enjoyed being around people. He just tinkering on the cars. He was always working on something. He had a project on the go at all times. He would frustrate his siblings. He liked to push their buttons, but he was just adored. They felt lost when he wasn't around and couldn't wait for him to come home. We've had nothing but support. There's friends coming out of the woodworks that we didn't even know that he had touched, and they just wanted to stop by and tell us how much he was loved and how much he touched their lives, and that's really been what's getting us through these days. It doesn't feel real. It's just not okay. He was just too young. It makes me thrilled to know that he touched so many people. I knew how fantastic he was, but to see how many other people have been touched by him and also know that he was just a fantastic, loving boy.
A historic moment this morning, even if it was short-lived. Thousands of auto workers at the Windsor Assembly plant were out on strike. A tentative agreement has everyone back to work now, but there's pressure to deliver a deal that meets high expectations. The CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
It's a return to normal of sorts. People going back to work at the Stellantis minivan plant following a 7-hour strike starting at midnight when Unifor's deadline passed without a deal.
We appreciate that they're fighting so hard for us. We were really surprised that we ended up here. And in a lot of ways, I think, me personally, I'm glad we did end up here because that proves that they're fighting for more.
Nobody wants to be out here doing what we have to at this point, but we will do what we have to get the company to meet our demands.
Workers say they want higher wages, pension increases, and more money for retirees. Unifor says this deal will follow the pattern set with Ford and General Motors. That means a near 20% raise over 3 years for production workers, cutting the time to reach top rate wages in half to 4 years, and signing bonuses. $10,000 for full-time employees, $4,000 for temporary employees. Unifor's national president said this deal came in a flurry overnight that she says included a push from Stellantis to outsource jobs.
They had come to the table rather aggressively, looking, obviously for some outsourcing at our parts depots, which we fended off, and looking to eliminate jobs in our office and clerical units, which we also fended off. That actually was happening at 6 a.m. this morning.
For workers, this deal is about making gains after lost ground during recessionary years in 2008. For Unifor, it's also about securing the future as Brampton shifts to electric vehicle production and Windsor awaits confirmation on what will roll off the line in years to come.
There was no doubt that we had to negotiate the strongest income security measures for our members and job protection during these kind of transitions, because these won't be the first of them. There are going to be others down the road.
There's also reports that UAW has reached a tentative deal with General Motors this morning. Ratification votes for Unifor will start this weekend in person. Results expected early next week. The auto industry has been hit hard over the past 3 years. A pandemic, the microchip shortage shutting down production, short strikes in Canada, continued stand-up strikes in America.
And there's no doubt in my mind that this period of time will be looked back upon in terms of what both our unions have been able to achieve as a high water mark for auto workers on both sides of the border.
Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
For years, families grieving the death of a baby have had nowhere to go for support. But that's going to change in the new year. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa brings us this story. And a warning, this next piece contains sensitive images and subject matter.
For Halloween, I dressed her Erna up. She's right now singing a little Halloween onesie with a pumpkin bow on.
Jerry Lynn Dowding is still trying to cope with the death of her daughter, Eden. In July, when Dowding was 6 months pregnant, she ended up in the hospital with complications and gave birth to a stillborn.
I have a really hard time with the fact that my daughter's gone and I can't bring her to do anything with me. I just need to leave her in my house and she sits on a shelf. There hasn't been any acceptance for me yet in what happened, and it's very hard to start coping and dealing with it all.
In the months since, Dowding says she's craved a space where she could mourn with other parents, but she couldn't find any community resources.
With all the paperwork I was given from the hospital for bereavement services and how much they stress that I should contact this agency and get a hold of this person, just for me to do those steps and to be told, we can't help you, you need to wait for help, I was shocked.
For the last 5 years, Windsor hasn't had an in-person support group for parents that are dealing with the death of a baby, specifically a miscarriage or stillbirth. In Windsor, Essex, recent data from 2020 shows that the stillbirth rate was 8.69 per 1,000 births. That's higher than the provincial rate. The Canadian Mental Health Association's Windsor Essex branch canceled their bereavement program in 2018 due to low demand, but it's now looking to relaunch that program next year.
There certainly is need for support because we know, like any loss, it has an impact, right? Someone, as a mom, as a father, as a family, there was an anticipated birth, and when that does not occur, then there's feelings of what could have been.
Depression is common after the death of a baby, but McMahon Co-Martin says people feeling short-tempered, irritable, or resentful should also take that as a sign to reach out for help. There's no official start date for the program just yet, but each session will run about 6 weeks. Dowding hopes the support program will be there to help others.
It makes me really sad to think of all the women I've heard in the city who just haven't even spoken about their children because there's just nothing.
Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
If you or someone you know is looking for a bereavement program, you can call the Canadian Mental Health Association's Windsor Essex branch at 519-257-5111, extension 72621, or call their 24/7 crisis line at 1-833-456-4566. Windsor police have charged a man and a woman after a 9-year-old child died. Sorry, that's a 9-month-old child died. Investigators say it happened more than a year ago on September 14th, 2022. Paramedics responded to a home in the Ford City area and found the child without vital signs. The 9-month-old was pronounced dead in hospital. A 29-year-old woman and 28-year-old man have both been charged with manslaughter and failing to provide the necessities of life. Police say they are not naming them to protect the identity of the victim. More people in Ontario are now able to receive an updated COVID-19 booster shot. The province made the booster available to everyone over the age of 6 months today. It's designed to target the XBB variant. The local health unit says people who want the shot should get it from their healthcare provider or a local pharmacy, as they are fully booked, giving the booster to high-risk individuals at this time. We asked people if they would be getting the new booster.
I am very excited about the expanded vaccines because we have a lot of family members who either have cancer or are elderly, so we will definitely be getting ours.
I'm going to get it, and I'm older, but I want to stay healthy. I'll do anything that can keep my longevity.
I allow my body to take care of myself, and I'm responsible to take care of myself, so and I'm in good health. If you need something like that and you're in bad health, you should consider those things.
A 45-year-old man has been arrested after allegedly ramming a stolen vehicle into a drive-through ATM. Windsor police say they were called at around 10 o'clock last night to the TD ATM in the Dougal Avenue parking lot near the Real Canadian Superstore. Police say the man used a stolen water truck to smash into the freestanding cash machine several times. Police say they quickly located the suspect and arrested him. He has been charged with mischief over $5,000, possession of property obtained by a crime over $5,000, and attempt theft over $5,000. TD Bank tells CBC News that a replacement unit is scheduled to be installed in January of 2024 and that customers can use nearby branches in the meantime. On this day in 1941, a plane headed for Detroit crashed into a field near St. Thomas. It was considered the worst aviation disaster in Canadian history at the time. And more than 80 years later, the cause still remains a mystery. But as the CBC's Dale Molnar found out, there's some who are still hopeful to make a discovery.
They were flying in adverse conditions, like very dangerous conditions.
Nobody knows what happened.
It's a mystery that has endured over 80 years. The American Airlines DC-3, called the flagship Erie, set out for Detroit from Buffalo on the evening of October 30th, 1941, and because there was no radar at the time, the pilot had to check in at a radio range station at Jarvis, Ontario. It would have followed this path and checked in at Florence and then on to Detroit. The pilot did check in at Jarvis, but about 20 minutes later crashed at 10:20 p.m. at Lawrence Station.
The transmissions were normal. There was no sign of distress. There was no sign of any abnormality.
3 crew members and 17 passengers all perished.
People on the ground saw the wing lights, and they saw the plane going into circles. And it went into circles, and then it plunged into the ground.
Elder College founder Lloyd Brownjohn says although it was the worst air disaster at the time, it was quickly forgotten when the Pearl Harbor attack happened a few weeks later. He was inspired to hold a special course on the plane crash after reading about it in this book. Despite both Canadian and American investigations, a cause was not determined.
There was a conspiracy theory. On board were a number of United Auto Worker union people on a way to a convention or something in Detroit.
A theory made even more credible since UAW founder Walter Reuther died in a plane crash in 1970.
Yep, very simple device.
But these 3 aviation professionals, along with local pilot Ron Holden, will share their theories at the upcoming course at the Canadian Aviation Museum. Andy Pumple doesn't think sabotage was the cause.
Had there been a bomb or something on board the airplane, it wouldn't have continued to circle or maneuvered prior to the crash.
He believes a mechanical or aerodynamic issue is more likely, or it could have been a number of factors and even several events coming together that added up to the disaster. One possibility, ice in the carburetor.
Ultimately causing the engine to develop less than full power.
Since the plane was seen spiraling to the ground, Frank McLean says it could have meant fuel was being drawn from only one wing, making the other wing heavier.
Causing an imbalance in the aircraft. These old aircraft had very complicated fuel management system. You always had to make sure that one selector switch was off prior to engaging the other.
McLean says the pilot would have been trying to make heroic efforts to gain control. There was evidence he was at the wheel. And while the professionals say it's not likely the pilot crashed the plane on purpose, they say he did have a medical condition called Ryeneck.
It's a condition where a muscle spasm causes the head to tilt sideways, and under tremendous amount of pain, the pilot could possibly lose control of the aeroplane.
And the co-pilot didn't have as much experience as the pilot had.
It was actually the first time he was on a revenue flight for American Airlines.
According to the Canadian investigation, there was nothing wrong with the autopilot, but the professionals say it was in its infancy and the crew might have not been well versed in using it. The crash has been made into a stage play, and there is a memorial at the crash site near Lawrence Station. Crashes like this one led to the introduction of so-called black boxes. Brownjohn will be joined by museum facilitator Dave Fluke. At this special one-day course, everyone is encouraged to bring their own theories.
It's a mystery. It's a time to get people to think about some things that went on in the past, and it's local.
The Elder College course will be held here at the Canadian Aviation Museum on November 7th from 2 to 4 p.m. It's free, except there is a $10 charge to get into the museum. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
The Boblo Island ferry is out of service, causing problems for the roughly 250 people who live there. Amherstburg Mayor Michael Proulx, who lives on the island, says Transport Canada shut down the backup ferry last week. That's because they deemed it unsafe after a recent inspection. And the island's other ferry has already been out of service for repairs. The Amherstburg Ferry Company operates the boats and says one of them should be running again on Wednesday. A Maidstone woman has helped secure Canada's equestrian team's ticket to the Summer Olympics in Paris. Equestrian Lindsay Trenell and teammates posted a narrow victory over the United States to win gold at the Pan Am Games yesterday. Trenell also won an individual bronze in the show jumping alongside her horse, Bassie Rouge. Following the event, she said her most proud accomplishment was the team one. Back in September, she told CBC Windsor going to the Pan Ams was a dream come true, as she's been competing since she was just 9 years old. After 4 years in foster care, Sailor, a Windsor dog, has finally been adopted. The Chihuahua crossbreed has spent almost all of its life in care. He has a spinal cord injury and was finding it tough to find his forever home. The CBC's TJ Deer has Sailor's story.
He came from one of the shelters in Georgia and from Hurricane Dorian. In 2019, there was a group of rescues that helped a lot of the dogs that were displaced from Hurricane Dorian, and a lot of rescues from Ontario pulled a lot of dogs, and he was one of them that we had helped. And from what we understand is he was either kicked or hit, and that's why he has that little injury to his spine. We were going to find the proper home for him, no matter what it took, and it had to be suitable for him. And you know, people were like, well, he could live in an apartment. No. He loves to be in a yard and sun himself, and you know, that's what we wanted for him.
How difficult is it to get dogs with disabilities adopted in general?
It all depends on the disability, you know, and what people are willing to work with. Disabilities, they're just like children. When some people have, you know, a hearing disability, same with dogs, you know, some people are willing to work with that.
How difficult is it to get rescue animals adopted right now in general?
It's pretty hard because there's so many owner surrenders and people that think that we should give dogs away, and that's not what rescue is. You know, we put a lot of time, money, and energy and love into these animals, and giving away these dogs is not what rescue is all about. So trying to find good quality homes where people are going to love and care for these animals and give them a forever home and not give up on these animals, it's pretty hard because we vet these adopters pretty good.
You've probably got your kids' Halloween costume ready to go, but how many layers will you beg them to wear under it? Your weather forecast coming up after the break. as we used to always say in our house growing up, one more sleep until Halloween.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks say that like with Christmas or things like that. But yeah, it's a great holiday, isn't it?
When the candy is coming, it's an exciting time for kids.
Yeah, it's not just gifts, candy as well. I'm so there with you. I love it. I think it's a great holiday. And let's talk about what we can expect.
I was just going to ask, what do parents need to know when they're dressing their kids up tomorrow?
Yeah, and what they need to know is that we are looking at some cool readings. So we are going to see those temperatures on the chillier side. I think you got a hint from that today, right? Mostly cloudy. This is at what I'm calling our witching hour. I know it's a little different with the stock market. It's in the afternoon, but our witching hour, we'll call it 6:30. The sun will have set, getting dark. So depending how young they are, what time you're heading out. Mostly cloudy, 3 degrees, a westerly wind about 10 to 20 kilometers an hour, and should be dry. And I say it like that because I'm going to show you here just the chance for that little bit of shower or even mixing with the wet flurry kind of in that corridor of trick-or-treating time. So first of all, dealing with the daytime highs, and let's not spend a lot of time on these because they weren't that exciting. A cool feel, the overcast conditions, and then of course these are the current readings, but we have to factor in the winds as well. So that west to northwesterly flow, sustained winds still in place, but the gusts have backed off somewhat. So some areas like Sarnia, Chatham, Kent, not even seeing those gusts at the moment over 30 kilometers. So things looking pretty good in that sense. But here is what I'm talking about. You look to the north, not just showers, but seeing a bit of a light mix. There has been some lake effect snow, seeing some of that kind of setting up, and the winds in the lakes really being a factor and playing a role here. Not because of the west northwesterly winds, but because we will see those winds shifting around later tomorrow, getting to the southwest, and that's going to change things around a little bit. So moving ahead and just checking out that forecast timeline through the overnight tonight, we do get into some clearing after this evening anyway, and that's when we get into partly cloudy conditions, then kind of variable skies tomorrow, a mix of sun and cloud at times. There will be some sun in there at least to appreciate at times, but here we are 6 o'clock, and at least in the neighborhood, a few wet flurries around. So don't say Colette didn't tell you if you see the odd one, but I wouldn't be worried about being prepared for really wet weather, just for the cool temperatures that we're going to be experiencing. Okay, and speaking of the cool temperatures, experiencing those overnight tonight. Look at these readings and then the wind chill, even though the wind's getting lighter overnight tonight, -3 to -6. And certainly going to be a cool start tomorrow into the afternoon, a high of 6 degrees. So we will recover, but still well below seasonal. In fact, we're not closer to seasonal, Meg, till we get towards the end of the week, Friday, and into the weekend.
Oh, Colette, I am feeling bad for those parents that have to beg their kids to put on that winter jacket over their cute costume.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but you know, haven't we all done it or seen it or experienced it in this country around Halloween? So here we are again.
It's the very end of October, I guess. Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Well, it's not just humans who enjoy Halloween treats. Some zoo creatures today are also getting in on the festive foods. That's coming up after the break. Hundreds of university students gathered for a protest in Montreal today and voiced their opposition to the Quebec government's plan to raise tuition fees for some students. Hey, ho, ho! Tuition hikes has got to go! A year from now, tuition is expected to nearly double for undergraduate students from out of province, regardless of what school they attend. That will bring fees up to around $17,000 a year. There are plans to increase tuition fees for international students, too. They will have to pay about $20,000. The government says the move is to increase funding for French language institutions. Well, it's hard to say goodbye to October without Halloween treats and, of course, pumpkins, both carved and stuffed. A zoo in England has made sure its furry residents are not missing out on the celebration, including this 2-year-old lioness. She made short work of a jack-o'-lantern stuffed with meaty treats. Some others seemed a bit more picky. Whipsnade Zoo is home to 245 species. Many of the animals remain under threat of extinction in their natural habitat. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.